Well, the developments of the case have, we've been doing this, 24 hours a day since last Wednesday. Investigators were out in the field last night working in conjunction with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. We're following up on a significant number of not only personal interviews, as this case applies, but also ensuring, working through the state attorney's office, that the appropriate warrants are, assembled and processed through the court system, to follow up on some of the technical side of this, with the tracking of individuals and their whereabouts, since, we know that potentially one of our suspects is no longer in the local area.
How many people of interest are you guys looking at this
As of this morning, we're still looking at possibly two individuals involved in this.
What, if anything, of a narrative can you give us right now of when she disappeared and what might have happened to her?
Well, we're establishing a timeline. I refer to this, we kind of reverse engineer things. We know from her cell phone the last time she communicated with anyone was approximately 12:21 last Wednesday. She communicated with a friend on Facebook Live, and they had a brief discussion before she left the house. So we know that that's probably the last person of a friendly nature, if you will, that had any contact with Naomi. We believe that shortly thereafter, while out on Johnson Avenue, she probably entered a vehicle with someone and then was transported out of that immediate vicinity, although she still, we believe, stayed within that area. Some of our technical follow-ups, working with our partners in the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, will help us, again, reverse engineer this thing to hopefully be able to track the time that Naomi left her house, and then unfortunately, we found her over on 8 Long Creek.
Do we have any idea of when she might have been killed?
At this time, no. The medical examiner's office, will do a thorough examination of Naomi, and through the processes that they use, on the criminalistic side of law enforcement, she'll be able to tell us, Dr. Minyard's office will be able to tell us, within hours, probably, of when Naomi unfortunately met her demise.
Do we know how, by what means she was killed?
At this time, no. And again, as I cautioned everyone yesterday, that's another one of those rushes, to where we begin to make suppositions about what may or may not have occurred. I would caution everyone on that because, initially where we found Naomi, one could easily assume that she was drowned. Well, again, we don't know that definitively. There's a very real possibility that she may have met her demise prior to being, placed in the water. And so, therefore, we wait for the medical examiner to tell us, what was the cause of death.
And at this point, do we know the people of interest? Is it possible the person who killed Naomi was known to the family already?
That's very possible, either to the family and or Naomi or a circle of friends. But again, as the investigation continues, we'll be able to further define that down. How did she make contact with them? Was it a random thing? Those are answers to the case, if you will, that are very significant in us developing the timeline for Naomi.
Do you have any idea of when an arrest might be made in this case?
No, that would depend upon, right now we're in that kind of odd transition period for an investigative case. As I tell everyone, when we have a case such as this, when it begins, the initial reports come in, I guess I'll use a sports analogy here for everyone. They'll probably be able to understand it a little better. The Escambia County Sheriff's Office is the quarterback at this point. We're kind of calling the plays, calling the shots, setting the timing of the process that we're moving forward. We're now at a phase in this game to where the state attorney's office is a co-quarterback because they're now working in conjunction with us on assembling the appropriate evidence that when we do begin to effect arrests in this case, that we make sure that all the legal parameters are met. As I've said prior to this interview, the worst thing that could happen is to make some silly mistake and either lose evidence and or the case in and of itself because we make a false move. So we're at a very critical juncture of this case and working with the state attorney to ensure that all the evidence gathered is admissible in court, and so therefore we can bring justice to Naomi and her family.
Tell us what happens today.
Today we're following up with the leads. It's we're since we've gone from a search operation and a rescue operation, we're down to basically grunt police work. That's following up now with leads because we've had this development in the case. We're now going to go back and recheck all interviews because now you may find that there's one or two or more people that you interviewed that either because of the place the case was in at that time, either withheld information or they divulge some information that now we want to follow up with. And so, we're going to keep a team assembled, at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office that's focused specifically on this. We've had assurances from the FBI, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, that they will remain here as long as we feel it's necessary for them to assist us in this case.
Tell me about the command center. Has that been broken down at the church?
The main command center, the Escambia County Board of County Commissioners and Mr. Jack Brown and Mr. John Dosh were kind enough to loan us. We have a command bus, but it's not near the size of the one that the county has, and so they were gracious enough to allow us to use their command center. It will be broken down shortly. We will move operations to purely now as a law enforcement operation. We have that capability within our own command bus, which is a very large bus, by the way, but we couldn't handle the number of civilian volunteers and all the associated individuals involved in this. We can now.
Talk to us again about the two people of interest. You said there are two people so far that you're
so far we have definitized two people, and again, I want to caution everyone, that could drop to one, or that could go to 3 or 4. We don't know at this point, but right now we have defined two people that we're extremely interested in, that because of all of our investigation to this point, we believe were somehow involved with Naomi, either during her demise or up to the point to where she was unfortunately met her death. So that's why, again, I caution everyone. I know everyone wants answers right now, and specific answers. The only time that's going to be forthcoming to anyone is at the conclusion of this case.
With regards to the two people of interest, are you having trouble locating them, or do you know where they are?
No, there's no problem with that at this point. We're just merely stepping through the process to ensure that when we have contact with them, we can take them into custody.
What can people out there do that were following this case? Is there anything people in Escambia County or the surrounding area can do?
Well, as always, we have a grieving family. Right now, on the law enforcement side, we've got to put on what we call our game face and move forward. We've got to bring this case to a conclusion, and while we certainly can't bring Naomi back, which is what we would all love to do, that's what we all would want to do, we can bring justice to Naomi and her family. And so the game face is on. We're moving in a straight line, we're moving forward, but the community can assist us there. We have a grieving family and a grieving community that needs help right now. Whenever we have an incident like this, and it's more devastating, I think, when it's a child, everybody wants to know why and how could this happen here. And there are those who want to fix blame because then that deflects or defers any responsibility that individuals may have. This is part of the collective grieving process. This is part of a human reaction to this. While I certainly don't like many aspects of it, it's something that we have to work through. So I would ask the community to come together, to understand that we're going through this process, and it just takes time. No one can make all these memories go away. We have to work our way through them.
You mentioned something yesterday, is that you are less concerned with the motive or the why and more concerned with finding whoever did this. Could you talk to us about where that stands?
Well, again, I do understand that's part of the healing process. The why is the healing process. You got to understand something psychologically. I want to deflect any responsibility for this. That I was just a citizen who was kind of walking down the street one day and this horrible tragedy befell me. Well, if you're a part of that family or if you're a part of that community, etc., that's not the answer you're looking for. These things don't just happen. There has to be a reason. So I want to blame law enforcement. I want to blame a teacher. I want to blame a parent. I want to blame someone because that will ease my collective guilt, if you will, because we've lost a 12-year-old child. That's part of the why process. I can't get wrapped up in the why. I think the community certainly doesn't want law enforcement to go scurrying off here and decide that I want to find out if this was, poor schooling, or was it poor parenting, or was it poor this that had some contributing factor to Naomi's demise. I don't concern myself with that. What I concern myself with is, again, some individual or individuals in my community took the life of a child. That's all I'm focused on. So again, I leave the why to psychologists and scriptwriters. They can work that out later.
Do you know when the autopsy report might be released?
I do not. We're hoping for it today, but that's Dr. Minyard, the medical examiner's office sets that pace, and we have no control over that whatsoever.
And any idea on when another formal update might be?
I do not.
All right. Thank you for your time, Sheriff Morgan. Amber, if you can get that off, I'll just wrap up here on the Facebook. Again, we were talking with Escambia County Sheriff David Morgan, giving us an update on this situation right now. We'll have more on this later today on News 5 will continue to follow it, but as of right now, the sheriff's saying that they're looking at 2 people of interest right now. No arrests have been made, no formal charges in this case so far, but they're continuing to follow it. They also say an important part of this investigation is also making sure that the evidence they do gather is admissible in court, and that's where the state attorney's office is coming in to be a part of this investigation as well. Reporting live on Facebook, I'm News 5's Chad Petrie.